My name is Garrett Wilson, 42 years old, and until today, I thought the worst part of my life was behind me. I work as a pediatric surgeon, saving children for 15 years while my own marriage to Karen crumbled. Now, standing in my living room with my 12-year-old son Aiden, I watch as Karen walks in with her new boyfriend Travis and a 5-year-old child I have never seen before. "Sign these divorce papers and leave now," Karen demands. "What? Mom, you really don't know?" Aiden interrupts, showing her a book that makes her face turn white as snow. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from. Hit like and subscribe to support people going through similar situations. My medical career has always demanded everything from me. Pediatric surgery isn't just a job, it's a calling that requires constant vigilance and sacrifice. For 15 years, I've spent countless nights at the hospital, my hands steady as I worked to save children whose parents looked at me with desperate hope in their eyes. While I found purpose in my work, those same hours created a growing void at home. The emergencies never seemed to arrive at convenient times. I missed Aiden's 10th birthday because a 6-year-old boy needed emergency surgery after a car accident. I was absent from our anniversary dinner when twins born prematurely needed immediate intervention. Karen would sit alone at restaurant tables or put leftovers in the refrigerator with notes that grew increasingly colder over time. Our bank account flourished while our emotional connection withered. I met Karen during our sophomore year of college. She was studying business administration, brilliant with numbers and strategic planning. I was pre-med, perpetually exhausted and surviving on caffeine. We connected at the campus library at 2 a.m, both of us determined students with clear visions for our futures. Karen had dark auburn hair that caught the fluorescent light, and a laugh that made studying ancient medical terminology bearable. "You know what I love about you, Garrett?" she asked me on our third date. "You want to fix things that most people would be afraid to touch." Karen believed in me before I fully believed in myself. She quizzed me for exams, brought me food during study sessions, and never complained when I disappeared into textbooks for days. When I was accepted to medical school, she celebrated more enthusiastically than I did. Her faith in my abilities never wavered, even when mine did. "We're going to build something incredible together," she promised. "You'll save lives, and I'll make sure we create a beautiful life at home." We married the summer after I completed medical school, just before my residency began. The ceremony was small but perfect. Karen handled every detail while I studied for my board examinations. She understood the demands of my career path and embraced them as part of our shared journey. That's why her eventual resentment caught me so off guard. When Karen told me she was pregnant with Aiden, it was the happiest moment of my life. I placed my hand on her stomach and made a solemn promise. "I will always be there for this child," I swore. "No matter what happens." The early years with Aiden were exhausting but joyful. Karen embraced motherhood with the same determination she approached everything else. She would send me photos throughout my hospital shifts, Aiden's first smile, his attempts at crawling, the mess he made with pureed carrots. I'd show the nurses, proud of my beautiful family waiting at home. On weekends, we'd take Aiden to the park, his laughter echoing as I pushed him on the swings. Karen would prepare elaborate picnics, and we'd sit on checkered blankets pretending the hospital pager wouldn't eventually interrupt our peace. In those moments, everything felt possible: a successful career, a loving marriage, a happy child. The first significant cracks appeared when Aiden started elementary school. Karen had returned to work part-time as a financial consultant, juggling her career with school pickups and household management. She excelled at both but grew increasingly resentful of my absences. "You've missed 3 school events in a row," she pointed out one night, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Aiden asked me today why his friend's dad coaches soccer but his dad is never around." "I'm saving children's lives," I explained, the defense feeling hollow even to my own ears. "And what about your own child's life?" Karen countered. "Are you going to save everyone else's family while yours falls apart?" I tried to bridge the growing gap. I scheduled date nights, booked weekend getaways, and even arranged for couples counseling. For brief periods, we'd reconnect. Karen's smile would return, her eyes would soften when she looked at me, and she'd curl against me at night instead of sleeping on the far edge of the mattress. But inevitably, another emergency would arise, another child would need me, and I'd watch the warmth in Karen's eyes fade once again. 6 months ago, Karen sat me down in our kitchen after Aiden went to bed. Her face was composed, but her hands trembled slightly as she placed them flat on the table between us. "I need space, Garrett," she said quietly. "I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I can't do this anymore." "Do what?" I asked, although I already knew the answer. "Pretend that we're still a family when we're just 3 people occasionally occupying the same house." She had already found an apartment for me, a clear indication she'd been planning this for weeks. She wanted me to move out while she kept the house. For Aiden's stability. I didn't fight her on it. Some part of me had been expecting this conversation for years, watching our marriage deteriorate like a slow terminal illness with no available treatment. We established a custody arrangement focused on Aiden's needs. I would have him on weekends and Wednesday nights, working my schedule around these precious hours. I threw myself into being fully present during our time together, putting my phone on silent and dedicating my complete attention to whatever Aiden wanted to do. In the months that followed, I noticed changes in Karen. She bought new clothes, more stylish and expensive than her usual practical wardrobe. She changed her hair, cutting the long locks I'd loved into a shorter, more sophisticated style. Her phone would ding with messages that made her smile secretly. She began taking mysterious weekend trips, leaving Aiden with me outside our normal arrangement. "Mom's acting weird," Aiden commented during one of our weekends together. "She's always on her phone, and she talks different now." "Different how?" I asked, trying to sound casual as I helped him with his science project. "Like she's trying to impress someone," he said, his perceptiveness surprising me. "And she laughs too loud at things that aren't funny." I told myself it wasn't my business anymore. Karen deserved happiness, even if it was without me. But I couldn't ignore the twist of pain in my chest when I realized she had likely moved on while I was still struggling to imagine a life without her. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when the doorbell rang. Aiden and I were in the middle of assembling a complex model rocket in the living room, one of our weekend projects that helped maintain our bond through the separation. I wasn't expecting Karen until evening, when she usually picked Aiden up. "Can you get that, Dad?" Aiden asked, focused on attaching a particularly tricky fin to the rocket body. When I opened the door, Karen stood there with an unfamiliar confidence in her posture. Beside her was a tall man with salt and pepper hair, expensive clothing, and a confident smile that immediately put me on edge. His hand rested possessively on Karen's lower back. A small child, perhaps 5 years old, clung to his leg, peering up at me with wide, uncertain eyes. "We need to talk," Karen said, walking past me without waiting for an invitation. Travis, as I would soon learn was his name, followed her in, his eyes scanning our home with an appraising look that made me feel like my possessions were being valued for auction. The child trailed behind, clutching a small stuffed dinosaur, looking completely out of place in this adult tension. "Nice place," Travis commented, though his tone suggested otherwise. "A bit traditional for my taste, but comfortable." Karen positioned herself in the center of the living room, pointedly ignoring the rocket model and the evidence of Aiden's and my bonding time. She pulled a thick envelope from her designer handbag and slapped it on the coffee table. "I need you to sign these divorce papers today," she announced. Her voice had a hard edge I'd never heard before. "And I need you to start looking for somewhere else to live. Travis and I want to move in here next month." I stared at her, trying to process the sudden escalation. "This is still legally my house too, Karen." We agreed I'd keep the apartment until we sorted everything out properly. She laughed, a brittle sound nothing like the warm laughter I remembered. "Things have changed. I'm ready to move forward with my life, and quite frankly, this dragging out isn't good for anyone." Travis stepped forward, placing his hand on Karen's shoulder in a gesture that seemed more about claiming territory than offering support. Karen tells me you're rarely home anyway, he said smoothly. Always at the hospital saving other people's children. Noble work, of course, but surely you understand that your family has needs too. The condescension in his voice made my fingers curl into fists. The child looked increasingly uncomfortable, hiding partially behind Travis's expensive trousers. Who is this? I asked, nodding toward the child. Karen waved dismissively. That's not important right now. What matters is finalizing this divorce so we can all move on. The papers include you surrendering claim to the house. The house I paid for. I clarified. While I raised your son and managed everything else. She countered. Besides, Travis and I are getting married as soon as the divorce is final. We need a stable home. The casual way she announced her engagement hit me like a physical blow. Not because I harbored hopes of reconciliation, but because of how completely she seemed to have replaced the life we built together. Travis began wandering around the living room, picking up photographs and examining them before setting them down in slightly different positions. We'll need to renovate, of course. Open concept is much more contemporary. And these furnishings. He trailed off with a grimace. You don't get to decide that, I said firmly. We need to follow the legal process here, Karen. I'm not signing anything today without my lawyer reviewing it. She opened her mouth to argue when a new voice joined the conversation. Dad? What's going on? Aiden stood in the doorway to the living room, his eyes darting between his mother, Travis, the unknown child, and the papers on the table. His face reflected confusion, quickly morphing into something harder to define. Aiden, honey. Karen's voice immediately softened. Travis and I just came to talk to your dad about some grown-up things. Aiden's eyes narrowed as he looked at Travis. I know who you are, he said quietly. Travis smiled indulgently. Your mom's told you about me, has she? Good things, I hope. No, Aiden replied, his voice stronger now. She hasn't told me anything. That's kind of the problem. He disappeared momentarily, returning with a leather-bound book that looked like a school project. Karen's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. Aiden, what is that? She asked sharply. Something you should see, he answered, his young face suddenly looking much older. Mom, you really don't know. He opened the book and turned it toward Karen. As she looked at the contents, all the color drained from her face. She reached for the nearest chair, sinking into it as though her legs could no longer support her weight. Where did you get this? She whispered. Travis stepped closer, peering over her shoulder at the book. His confident expression faltered, replaced by something that looked unsettlingly like fear. The book, as I would soon discover, was a meticulously documented investigation conducted by my 12-year-old son. Pages of photographs, dates, notes, and even receipts were carefully organized and annotated in Aiden's neat handwriting. It was part journal, part detective work, and it contained revelations that would change everything. I noticed things weren't right, Aiden explained, his voice trembling slightly despite his composed exterior. So I started paying attention. The mysterious book contained a timeline of Karen's affair, photographs Aiden had discovered and printed, and information about Travis that made my stomach clench. My son had turned his intelligence and observational skills into a painful but necessary exposé of the truth Karen had been hiding. Karen snapped the book closed with trembling hands, her composure cracking like thin ice under too much weight. This is ridiculous, she said, attempting to sound dismissive despite her pale face. Aiden, where did you get these ideas? This is completely inappropriate. She reached for the book, but Aiden pulled it back, holding it protectively against his chest. It's not inappropriate to want the truth, he said, his voice small but steady. I'm not a little kid anymore, Mom. Travis cleared his throat, checking his expensive watch with exaggerated interest. Karen, perhaps we should do this another time. We have that dinner reservation at 7. The 5-year-old child, seemingly forgotten in the tension, had retreated to a corner of the room, sitting cross-legged on the floor with the stuffed dinosaur held close. The sight sent a pang through my heart. This innocent child caught in adult complications they couldn't possibly understand. I stood frozen, my mind racing to process what was happening. The confirmation of Karen's affair wasn't entirely surprising. I had suspected something, but seeing the evidence compiled by my own son hit differently. Aiden had been carrying this burden alone, investigating his mother's betrayal while I remained oblivious, focused on hospital emergencies and custody schedules. Aiden, I finally managed. How long have you been working on this? He shrugged, attempting casual indifference that couldn't mask his hurt. A few months. After Mom started acting strange. When she thought I was playing video games, I was actually going through her cloud photos that sync to the family computer. Karen gasped. You went through my private photos? Aiden, that's a complete invasion of privacy. Like when you invaded Dad's privacy by bringing another man into your bed? Aiden shot back, his voice cracking with emotion. That's enough. I intervened, placing a hand on Aiden's shoulder. Let's all take a breath here. Karen and Travis exchanged tense whispers, their heads bent close together. The child in the corner watched with wide, solemn eyes. Show me what you found, I said quietly to Aiden. He opened the book again, turning to a section with dates meticulously noted alongside locations. Hotel receipts were taped to some pages, credit card statements on others. Aiden had highlighted unusual expenses and matched them with Karen's unexplained absences. It started last January, Aiden explained, pointing to the first entry. Mom said she was at a financial planning conference in Chicago, but there were pictures posted that weekend of her at a restaurant here in town. I recognized the date, over a year ago, when Karen and I were still living together, still sleeping in the same bed, still occasionally saying, I love you, before turning out the lights. She met him at a client's holiday party. Aiden continued, flipping pages to show a photo Karen had taken with Travis, their body language revealing an intimacy that went beyond professional acquaintance. Then they started meeting at the Lakeside Hotel every Thursday. Karen abandoned her whispered conference with Travis and strode across the room. This is absurd. I'm not going to be interrogated by my 12-year-old son. Garrett, control this situation. I think it's a bit late for that, I replied, my voice calmer than I felt. Aiden has clearly been noticing things we thought he wouldn't. Travis checked his watch again, increasingly agitated. Karen, we should go. This isn't productive. Karen ignored him, turning to face me with sudden fury. This is exactly why I'm leaving you, Garrett. You're never present when it matters. Do you have any idea how lonely it's been? How many nights I spent waiting for you to come home? How many times I had to explain to Aiden why his father missed another school event. So you found someone who would be there? I asked quietly. Travis appreciates me, she said, her chin lifting defiantly. He makes time for me. He listens when I talk. When was the last time you really listened to me, Garrett? When was the last time you put me first? The accusation stung because it contained a kernel of truth. I hadn't always been the husband Karen needed. My commitment to my patients had often come at the expense of my family. But her response had been to seek comfort elsewhere rather than fight for our marriage. You could have told me how bad things had gotten, I said. We could have tried harder to fix it. I tried for years, Karen replied, her voice breaking. You just never noticed. Aiden watched this exchange, his eyes moving between us like he was tracking a tennis match with life-altering consequences. Mom, he said finally, if you were unhappy, why didn't you just tell Dad? Why did you have to lie about everything? Karen's expression softened as she looked at our son. Adult relationships are complicated, honey. Sometimes people grow apart. That doesn't explain the lies, Aiden persisted. Or why you hid your new boyfriend for over a year. Or why you never told me about. He glanced at the child in the corner, then back at his mother with questioning eyes. Travis stepped forward, placing his hand possessively on Karen's waist. Your mother and I found something special together. Sometimes that happens unexpectedly. When you're older, you'll understand. Aiden's face hardened at Travis's condescending tone. I understand more than you think. He turned to another section of his book, revealing a timeline of Karen's mysterious weekend trips over the past 6 months. When Mom said she was visiting Aunt Cheryl in Portland, she was actually staying at Travis's lake house. I found the location tags on her photos. Karen's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. That's enough, Aiden. This stops now. Your father and I need to discuss the divorce privately. Go to your room. No, Aiden replied simply. I'm part of this family too. I deserve to know what's happening. I felt a surge of pride for my son's courage, even as my heart broke for the loss of his innocence. He shouldn't have had to turn detective to understand the fractures in his family. I think we should all calm down, I suggested, attempting to be the reasonable one despite the chaos swirling inside me. Aiden has raised some valid questions that deserve honest answers. Karen threw up her hands in frustration. Fine. Yes, Travis and I have been seeing each other. Yes, it started before our separation. I'm not proud of the deception, but I'm not sorry for finding happiness again. Now can we please get back to finalizing this divorce so everyone can move forward? Her dismissal of Aiden's pain and her eagerness to proceed with the divorce papers felt like twisting the knife. She wanted to skip past accountability straight to resolution without addressing the broken trust. We're not signing anything today, I said firmly, moving to stand beside Aiden. There's clearly more going on here than you've been honest about. Travis checked his watch for the third time, his impatience palpable. Karen, we need to go. Now. The urgency in his voice made me curious. What deadline were they working against? What was so important about this particular day for finalizing the divorce? As if sensing my questions, Aiden flipped to another page in his book. I think you should explain who this child is, he said quietly, looking directly at his mother. The one you've been visiting every other weekend. The 5-year-old child looked up at the mention, eyes wide with apprehension. Travis moved to stand slightly in front of the child, his posture protective and tense. That's Travis's son from a previous relationship, Karen said quickly. Too quickly. It's not relevant to our situation. Aiden tilted his head, skepticism clear on his young face. Are you sure about that? Because I found something weird when I was looking through your calendar. Karen's hand flew to her throat, a nervous gesture I recognized from our 15 years together. Aiden, there are adult matters that don't concern you. When did Travis get divorced? Aiden asked, ignoring her attempt to shut down the conversation. Because I looked him up online, and I couldn't find any record of a previous marriage. Travis's jaw tightened. My personal history isn't your business, kid. Something about Travis had been nagging at me since he walked in, a vague familiarity I couldn't place. Looking at him more carefully now, I felt recognition dawning. The pharmaceutical sales representative who had visited my hospital repeatedly 3 years ago, pushing a new pediatric pain medication that later proved to have serious side effects that weren't disclosed to doctors. Travis Mercer, I said slowly, watching his expression shift. You worked for NextGen Pharmaceuticals, didn't you? Travis's confident facade faltered momentarily. I've worked for several companies. The pharmaceutical industry is quite mobile. You specifically marketed Neuralex to our pediatric department. I continued, memories sharpening. There was an ethics investigation after 3 children developed severe liver complications. Karen looked between us, confusion evident on her face. What are you talking about, Garrett? Your boyfriend was involved in a major scandal at my hospital, I explained, keeping my voice level despite the anger building inside me. NextGen knew about potential liver toxicity in children but buried the data to get FDA approval. Travis was the rep who assured our medical team the drug was completely safe. Travis straightened his expensive tie, attempting to regain his composure. Those allegations were never proven. NextGen settled those lawsuits without admitting wrongdoing. It's ancient history. Not to the families of those children, I countered. One of them needed a liver transplant. Karen looked stricken. Travis never mentioned any of this. Because it's not relevant, Travis insisted, checking his watch again. Karen, we really need to go. We can deal with these papers another time. I'm curious why you're in such a rush, I said, my suspicions growing. What deadline are you working against today? Travis didn't answer, but his increasing agitation told its own story. The child had moved to stand beside him, small fingers clutching at his pant leg. Dad, Aiden said quietly, there's something else you should see. He turned to the final section of his book. This part was different from the meticulously organized evidence preceding it. These pages contained Aiden's personal writings, his feelings about the separation, his confusion over his mother's behavior, and his fear about the future. Reading his words made my chest ache. I started investigating because I was scared. Aiden explained, his voice small but determined. Mom was acting so different, and no one would tell me what was really happening. So I decided to find out for myself. One particular entry caught my eye, dated 3 months ago, when Karen had claimed to be visiting her sister in Portland. I saw Mom at the hospital today, Aiden had written. She didn't see me because I was waiting in the car while Dad ran in to get something from his office. She was in the pediatric wing with Travis and a little kid. They looked like a family, and it made me feel sick. I looked up from the page. You were at the hospital together? With the child? Karen's face crumpled. It's not what you think. Then what is it? I pressed, my patience finally breaking. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been living some kind of double life. A life that somehow involves my hospital and a child you've never mentioned. Travis stepped forward, his expression hard. This isn't the time or place. It's exactly the time and place, I interrupted. My son has been detective and therapist to himself for months because adults weren't honest with him. He deserves the truth, and so do I. The 5-year-old child began to whimper, clearly distressed by the rising tensions. My doctor's instincts kicked in as I noticed something concerning, a slight yellowish tint to the child's skin that triggered my professional alarm bells. How long has the child had jaundice? I asked, my tone shifting from angry spouse to concerned physician. Travis and Karen exchanged a quick, worried glance that confirmed my suspicions. They had noticed it too. It's just a slight tan, Travis said dismissively. Kids get darker in the summer. That's not a tan, I countered, moving closer to observe the child. That's jaundice, and it could indicate liver dysfunction. Has the child been taking any medications? Karen stepped between me and the child. Garrett, stop. This isn't your patient. No, but I'm a pediatric surgeon, and I'm seeing symptoms that concern me, I replied. Does this have anything to do with why you were in the pediatric wing 3 months ago? The tension in the room thickened as Travis and Karen exchanged another meaningful look. Aiden watched intently, his detective's mind clearly processing every reaction and non-verbal cue. We should go, Travis said again, more urgently. The child needs rest. The child needs medical attention if there's jaundice, I corrected. Especially given the context. What context? Karen asked defensively. The context of Travis's connection to a medication that caused liver damage in children, I explained. The context of secret hospital visits you didn't want me to know about. The context of rushing to finalize a divorce while hiding significant information. Aiden moved to stand beside me, his book clutched tightly against his chest. There's one more thing, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Aiden, don't, Karen warned, a note of panic entering her voice. Mom has been taking the child to Dr. Sanderson. Aiden continued, naming one of my colleagues in pediatric hepatology. I saw the appointments in her email when I was looking for clues about where she kept disappearing to. Dr. Sanderson specialized in childhood liver disorders, exactly the type of specialist who would treat complications from a medication like Neuralex. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture more disturbing than I had imagined. Is the child sick from the medication you promoted? I asked Travis directly. Travis's composed facade finally cracked completely. This is none of your business. Karen, we're leaving. Now. It became my business when my son had to turn detective to understand why his family was falling apart. I replied, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. And it's definitely my business as a physician if a child is suffering from pharmaceutical negligence. Karen sank onto the couch, her carefully constructed new life visibly unraveling. It's complicated, Garrett. Then uncomplicate it, I demanded. Tell me the truth. All of it. Aiden sat beside me, his presence a reminder of what was truly important here, not my wounded pride or Karen's new relationship, but the well-being of children caught in adult chaos. The child needs to be properly evaluated, I said, softening my tone. If there's jaundice, that requires immediate attention, not denial. We have it under control, Travis insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. Dr. Sanderson has been monitoring the situation. Without my knowledge, despite my position at the hospital, I noted. Why the secrecy unless there's something you're hiding? The 5-year-old child began to cry softly, overwhelmed by the tension. Karen moved automatically to comfort them, her maternal instincts overriding the awkwardness of the situation. The tenderness in her expression as she knelt beside the child struck me. It was the same look she'd had when Aiden was small and needed comfort. Mom, Aiden said quietly, just tell the truth. Please. Karen looked at our son, then at me, then back at the crying child. Something shifted in her expression, a decision being made, a wall coming down. Travis, she said softly, I can't do this anymore. The secrets are hurting everyone. Travis's expression hardened. Karen, think about what you're doing. I'm thinking about what I should have done months ago, she replied, straightening her shoulders. Tell the truth. Aiden took a deep breath and turned to the final pages of his book. Unlike the earlier sections filled with photographs and timelines, these pages contained something entirely different: medical documents and what appeared to be laboratory results. I found these in Mom's home office, he explained, his voice small but steady. I didn't understand all of it, but I recognized the medical terms because Dad talks about his work sometimes. Karen reached for the book. Aiden, where did you get those? Those are private medical records. They were in the folder marked insurance claims on your desk, Aiden replied. I was looking for evidence about you and Travis, but I found something else instead. The pages contained pediatric medical records with the patient name partially redacted, but the date of birth was clearly visible. I quickly calculated, 5 years and 3 months old. The same age as the child standing in our living room. More disturbing were the lab results. Elevated liver enzymes, markers of liver dysfunction, and most significantly, a DNA paternity test. My medical training allowed me to interpret what Aiden had discovered but couldn't fully understand: genetic testing confirming biological parentage. The child is yours, I said, looking directly at Karen, the pieces finally clicking into place. Yours and Travis's. Karen's face crumpled as the secret she'd been desperately hiding finally came to light. The child, her child with Travis, stared at us with wide, confused eyes. 5 years ago, I continued, doing the mental calculation, when I was working double shifts during the hospital expansion. When you said you were taking that women's retreat to find yourself. Travis stepped forward, attempting to regain control of the situation. This doesn't change anything about the divorce proceedings. If anything, it should make you more willing to sign the papers and move on. It changes everything, I countered. It means Karen has been living a double life for years, not months. It means she had a child with you and kept that child secret from her husband and her son. Aiden was staring at his mother with an expression of profound betrayal. I have a half-sibling I never knew about. For 5 years? Karen sank onto the couch, her carefully constructed facade finally crumbling completely. I never meant for any of this to happen, she whispered. It was one weekend, a stupid mistake when Garrett and I were going through a rough patch. I was going to end it, but then I found out I was pregnant. So you hid your pregnancy, gave birth in secret, and pretended the child didn't exist? I asked, trying to comprehend the scale of the deception. Travis convinced me it was the only way, Karen admitted, tears streaming down her face. He said you would divorce me if you found out, that we'd lose everything. He helped me arrange the fake retreat, found doctors in another city, set up the separate apartment where I could recover and take care of the baby without anyone knowing. Travis shifted uncomfortably. I was protecting my child. And Karen's reputation. You were protecting yourself. I corrected, anger rising at his self-serving justification. What kind of father keeps his child a secret? What kind of man asks a mother to deny her own child's existence? The 5-year-old, I still didn't even know the child's name, moved closer to Karen, sensing her distress. Despite everything, the child sought comfort from their mother, a bond that had clearly formed despite the bizarre circumstances. What's your name? I asked the child directly, kneeling down to their eye level. Jamie. The child replied softly. I'm 5. Hello, Jamie, I said gently. I'm Dr. Garrett. Karen wiped her tears, visibly struggling to regain composure. After Jamie was born, I tried to figure out how to tell you. But weeks turned into months, and the lie got bigger. Travis convinced me it was too late, that you'd never forgive me. He said we should just keep things as they were. He would raise Jamie, and I could visit whenever I could make up an excuse to be away. So all those trips to see your sister, the conferences, the weekend retreats. I trailed off, the magnitude of the deception overwhelming. We're to see Jamie, she confirmed, unable to meet my eyes. Travis has a nanny who helps when I'm not there. Aiden stood rigidly beside me, his young face struggling to process this betrayal. You had another kid and didn't tell me? I have a brother or sister you kept secret? Half-sister, Karen corrected softly. Jamie is your half-sister. How could you do this? Aiden's voice cracked with emotion. To Dad, to me, to Jamie? Didn't you think about how messed up this is? Jamie deserves a real family, not to be some secret you visit when it's convenient. Karen flinched at the justified anger in our son's voice. I know it was wrong. I've known it all along. But each day that passed made it harder to tell the truth. Travis checked his watch again, his impatience overriding even this dramatic revelation. This doesn't change our plans, Karen. We need to finalize the divorce so we can move forward as a proper family. A proper family built on lies? I challenged, rising to my full height. What happens when Jamie starts asking questions about why she was kept secret for 5 years? What happens when she learns her father valued his reputation over her right to exist openly? Travis's expression hardened. You don't get to judge my parenting when you've been an absent father to your own son. At least my son knows I exist. I shot back. At least I've never denied him or hidden him away like something shameful. Karen rose from the couch, her face pale but determined. The jaundice started 3 months ago, she said, changing the subject abruptly. At first, the pediatrician thought it was just a virus, but when it didn't improve, we saw a specialist. Dr. Sanderson, I confirmed. She nodded. He ordered tests and found elevated liver enzymes. When he asked about medication history, Travis didn't want to mention Neurolex, but I insisted. Jamie was part of a pediatric pain study 2 years ago. I felt physically ill at this revelation. You allowed your daughter to be part of a drug trial for a medication Travis knew had potential safety issues? The same medication that caused liver failure in my patients? Travis straightened defensively. The study was fully approved by the FDA. Jamie qualified because of her chronic ear infections. The benefits outweighed the risks. The benefits to whom? I asked incredulously. To Jamie, or to your career advancement when the drug got approved? Did you even disclose your relationship to the study administrators? Karen interrupted before Travis could respond. Dr. Sanderson believes Jamie's liver issues are connected to the medication. He's been monitoring her condition, but the enzymes have been getting worse, not better. I looked at Jamie with new concern, my physician's eye noting symptoms I hadn't fully processed before, not just the jaundice, but the slight swelling in her abdomen, the fatigue evident in her posture. She needs comprehensive care, I said firmly. Not secretive visits managed around lies and deception. That's why we're here today, Karen admitted quietly. Dr. Sanderson thinks Jamie may eventually need a transplant evaluation. He suggested we consult with you since you're one of the top pediatric transplant surgeons in the region. But Travis wanted to finalize the divorce first, to establish a clear family structure before bringing you into Jamie's medical care. The full picture finally came into focus. The rushed divorce, Travis's impatience, Karen's desperation. They needed my professional expertise but wanted legal closure first, a clean break that would establish them as Jamie's parents with me as merely the surgeon, not the betrayed husband. So this was never about closure or moving on, I said, understanding dawning. This was about setting up a narrative where I'm just the doctor, not the man who was married to Jamie's mother when she was conceived and born. Travis at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. It's cleaner this way. For everyone. Cleaner? Aiden interjected, his voice shaking with anger. My sister is sick, and you're worried about paperwork being clean? Jamie looked up at the word sister, her young face showing the first sign of interest in the adult conversation swirling around her. Sister? She repeated, looking at Aiden curiously. Aiden knelt down to Jamie's level, his anger temporarily set aside. I guess I'm your big brother, he said softly. I didn't know about you before today. I have a brother? Jamie asked, looking to Travis for confirmation. Travis shifted uncomfortably. It's complicated, sweetheart. No, I said firmly. It's not complicated. Aiden is Jamie's half-brother. I was married to Karen when Jamie was conceived and born. These are simple biological and legal facts that have been obscured by adult choices. Karen began to cry again, silent tears tracking down her face. I've made such a mess of everything, she whispered. Travis's phone rang, and he stepped away to answer it, speaking in hushed tones. When he returned, his expression was tense. That was Dr. Sanderson, he explained. Jamie's latest lab results came in. The liver enzymes are significantly elevated. He wants to admit her for observation and additional testing. Karen gasped, moving to gather Jamie into her arms. Now? Today? Travis nodded grimly. He's concerned about the rate of decline. I felt a surge of professional concern overriding the personal drama. If Sanderson is recommending admission, you should take her to the hospital immediately. That's what we were trying to do, Travis snapped. Get the divorce papers signed and move forward with Jamie's care with clear boundaries in place. You don't need my signature to get Jamie proper medical care, I pointed out. And trying to manipulate legal proceedings around a child's health crisis is unconscionable. Karen looked up from where she held Jamie. I've been so wrong about everything, she admitted. So focused on protecting myself that I've hurt everyone I love. Aiden moved to stand beside me, his young face resolved despite the emotional turmoil. Jamie needs help now, he said simply. Everything else can wait. In that moment, my 12-year-old son showed more maturity than any of the adults in the room. His instinct to prioritize his newly discovered sister's well-being over the tangled web of adult deceptions made me profoundly proud, even as my heart broke for the burdens he'd been carrying. Aiden's right, I said, making a decision. Let's get Jamie to the hospital. We can sort out the rest later. As a pediatric surgeon, I've learned that medical crises have a way of cutting through life's complications, reducing everything to what truly matters. Standing in the pediatric intensive care unit watching Dr. Sanderson examine Jamie, I felt that clarifying focus despite the bizarre circumstances. Karen sat beside Jamie's bed, holding her small hand and whispering reassurances. Travis paced near the window, alternating between worried glances at Jamie and agitated phone calls to what sounded like his lawyer. Aiden sat quietly in the corner, his detective's notebook replaced by a graphic novel he wasn't actually reading, his eyes constantly drifting to the half-sister he just discovered. The enzyme levels are concerning, Dr. Sanderson told us after completing his examination. I'd like to perform a liver biopsy to assess the extent of the damage. Will it hurt? Jamie asked in a small voice. I stepped forward automatically. You'll be asleep for the procedure, I explained gently. And afterward you might feel a little sore, but the nurses have special medicine to make sure you're comfortable. Dr. Sanderson raised an eyebrow at my involvement but didn't comment on it. Dr. Wilson is right, he confirmed. We'll take very good care of you. Karen looked up at me gratefully. Despite everything, in this moment we were united in concern for a child. I'd like Dr. Wilson to consult on the case, Karen said firmly, surprising everyone. He's the best pediatric surgeon in the hospital. Travis frowned. Is that appropriate given the personal complications? I don't care about appropriate right now, Karen replied. I care about Jamie getting the best possible care. Dr. Sanderson looked between us, clearly sensing the tension but professional enough not to inquire further. Dr. Wilson's expertise would certainly be valuable if you're all in agreement. Travis started to object, but Karen cut him off. This isn't about you or me or Garrett anymore. This is about Jamie. I was moved by Karen's willingness to set aside our personal drama for Jamie's benefit. It was the first genuinely maternal decision I'd seen her make regarding Jamie, putting her daughter's needs above her own comfort or convenience. I'd be happy to consult, I said, addressing Dr. Sanderson rather than Karen or Travis. Though given the personal connection, I think it would be best if I'm not the primary surgeon should any procedures be necessary. Dr. Sanderson nodded his agreement. That seems appropriate. Let me schedule the biopsy for tomorrow morning. In the meantime, we'll continue supportive care and monitoring. As he left to make the arrangements, an uncomfortable silence fell over the room. The four adults, myself, Karen, Travis, and Aiden, who despite his age was handling the situation with remarkable maturity, were left to navigate the emotional aftermath of the day's revelations while maintaining a calm front for Jamie's benefit. Aiden was the first to break the silence, moving to sit on the edge of Jamie's bed. Do you like dinosaurs? He asked, nodding toward the stuffed dinosaur she clutched. Jamie nodded, a small smile breaking through her worried expression. This is Rex. He protects me when I'm scared. That's a good name for a T-Rex. Aiden approved. I have a whole collection of dinosaur books at home. Maybe you'd like to see them sometime. The simple, kind overture from my son brought tears to my eyes. Despite the shock and betrayal he must be feeling, his instinct was to connect with his half-sister, to offer comfort rather than rejection. Karen seemed similarly affected, wiping away tears as she watched the interaction. That would be nice, wouldn't it, Jamie? She encouraged. Travis checked his watch again, a habit I was beginning to intensely dislike, and moved toward the door. I need to make some calls. Work issues. As soon as he left, the atmosphere in the room lightened noticeably. Jamie visibly relaxed, and Karen's shoulders lost some of their tension. He's not very good with hospitals, Karen explained weakly. Or with taking responsibility, I added quietly, ensuring Jamie couldn't hear. Karen didn't defend him, which spoke volumes. I've made so many mistakes, she said instead, her voice barely audible. Aiden had taken out his phone and was showing Jamie pictures of his dinosaur collection, creating a bubble of normalcy in the surreal situation. Their heads bent close together, the family resemblance was suddenly striking, the same shape to their eyes, the same curve to their chins. Why don't I take Aiden to get some dinner in the cafeteria? I suggested. Give you some time with Jamie. Karen nodded gratefully. Aiden, would you like to go with your dad? Jamie needs to rest a bit. Aiden looked reluctant to leave his newfound sister but agreed. I'll come back after dinner, he promised Jamie. Maybe Dad can help me find a dinosaur book in the gift shop. As we walked down the hospital corridor, Aiden's expression turned serious. Dad, is Jamie going to be okay? Dr. Sanderson is excellent at his job, I answered truthfully. And we'll know more after the biopsy. Aiden nodded, processing this. If she needs a new liver, can you do that? Liver transplants are very complex, I explained. But we have an excellent transplant team here. If that becomes necessary, Jamie will have the very best care. Good, Aiden said firmly. Because she's my sister. Even if Mom and Travis tried to pretend she wasn't. We found a quiet corner of the cafeteria, away from the nurses and doctors who might recognize me. Over trays of mediocre hospital food, I finally had a moment to really talk with my son about the day's events. I'm sorry you had to become a detective, I told him. That burden shouldn't have been on your shoulders. Aiden poked at his mashed potatoes. I just wanted to understand what was happening. First you and Mom separated, then she started acting weird. No one was telling me anything, so I decided to find out for myself. You're incredibly brave and resourceful, I said. But I'm sorry you discovered such painful truths. Are you mad at Mom? He asked directly. I considered the question carefully. I'm hurt and disappointed by the choices she made. Keeping Jamie a secret wasn't fair to anyone, not to me, not to you, and certainly not to Jamie. But anger doesn't help us move forward. Travis is kind of a jerk, Aiden observed with the blunt honesty of youth. Despite everything, I laughed. That's a pretty accurate assessment. He made Mom keep Jamie a secret, Aiden continued. That's messed up. Jamie deserves better. Yes, she does, I agreed. And now that we know about her, we can make sure she gets what she deserves, a family who acknowledges her and cares for her. Aiden looked up at me, his expression serious. Are you going to sign those divorce papers? Eventually, I answered honestly. But not under pressure, and not without proper legal review. Your mom and I are over as a couple, Aiden. That was true before today's revelations. But how we handled the divorce has changed because of Jamie. Because she's sick? Partly, I acknowledged. But also because any agreement needs to consider your relationship with your sister going forward. Aiden nodded, seemingly satisfied with this explanation. I want to know her. She seems nice, and it's not her fault adults made bad choices. His maturity and compassion humbled me. You're an amazing kid, you know that? When we returned to Jamie's room, we found Karen alone, sitting by the window. Travis had to go to the office, she explained, though the excuse sounded hollow. Jamie's sleeping. Sure enough, the little girl was curled up with her dinosaur, monitors beeping softly beside her bed. Convenient timing, I observed quietly. Karen didn't defend him this time. He's not handling this well, she admitted. The medical issues, the family complications, it's not what he signed up for. And what exactly did he sign up for? I asked, keeping my voice low so as not to disturb Jamie. A secret affair? A hidden child? What kind of man participates in that arrangement? The kind who's more concerned with appearances than substance, Karen replied, surprising me with her candor. I was so desperate for attention that I mistook his interest for love. By the time I realized my mistake, I was pregnant and trapped in a web of lies. Aiden had moved to sit beside Jamie's bed, keeping a gentle vigil over his sleeping sister. His presence gave Karen and me a moment of relative privacy. Why didn't you tell me? I asked the question that had been burning inside me all day. Even if the pregnancy was the result of an affair, we could have figured something out. Divorce, co-parenting, anything would have been better than this deception. Karen wiped away tears. Travis convinced me you would take everything, the house, custody of Aiden, my reputation. He said a pediatric surgeon would always win against an unfaithful wife in court. I was scared and ashamed, so I let him guide me into this impossible situation. I would never have used the courts to punish you, I said. Despite our problems, we could have handled it like adults. I know that now, she whispered. I've known it for years, really. But each day that passed made it harder to tell the truth. How do you admit to hiding a child for a year? For 2 years? For 5 years? The lie grew until it seemed impossible to escape. I watched Aiden gently adjust Jamie's blanket, his protective instincts already in full force. Well, now the truth is out. The question is what we do next. I don't know, Karen admitted. I honestly don't know. Before we could continue the conversation, Dr. Sanderson returned with test results and plans for the morning's biopsy. The medical reality of Jamie's condition temporarily superseded the interpersonal drama, giving us all a more important focus than our complicated feelings. Later that evening, as Jamie slept and Aiden dozed in a recliner beside her bed, Travis finally returned. His expression was tight, his movements stiff as he entered the hospital room. We need to talk, he said to Karen. Privately. They stepped into the hallway, their hushed conversation quickly escalating into a heated argument audible through the door. I couldn't make out all the words, but Travis's tone was defensive and Karen's responses increasingly upset. When they returned, Karen's eyes were red and her hands trembling. Travis looked coldly resolved, his earlier anxiety replaced by detachment. I have an early meeting tomorrow, he announced. I'll check in when I can. Karen stared at him in disbelief. Your daughter is having a liver biopsy in the morning, which is being handled by the best doctors, he replied smoothly. My presence won't change the medical outcome. But Jamie will want you here, Karen insisted. Travis glanced at the sleeping child. She'll understand. She always does. With that callous dismissal, he left, not even bothering to say goodbye to his daughter. The silence he left behind was weighted with unspoken judgment. He's not coming back, is he? I asked quietly. Karen shook her head, fresh tears spilling. He said this is too complicated now. That our arrangement was supposed to be simple and manageable. He suggested I handle the medical issues while he reconsiders our situation. He's abandoning his child when she needs him most. I translated, anger rising on Jamie's behalf. He was never fully committed, Karen admitted. To Jamie or to me. I just didn't want to see it. In that moment, looking at Karen's devastation and the two sleeping children, one mine, one not, but both innocent in this adult chaos, I made a decision that would change all our lives. We'll figure this out, I promised. Not for you or me, but for them. 6 months can change everything. Standing in the backyard of what was once my house but is now legally established as Aiden and Jamie's house, I watched the two children chase each other through the sprinkler, their laughter a healing balm after the difficult journey we've all traveled. The legal proceedings concluded with arrangements none of us could have predicted that fateful day when Karen arrived with divorce papers and secrets. Instead of the clean break Travis and Karen had planned, we established something much more complicated but ultimately healthier for everyone involved. The divorce was finalized 3 months ago, with terms focused on the children's well-being. I kept the family home, not out of spite but to provide stability for Aiden and, unexpectedly, for Jamie as well. After Travis's true character was revealed by his absence during Jamie's health crisis, Karen made the difficult decision to seek full custody of her daughter and establish formal visitation rights for Travis, rights he has exercised sporadically at best. Karen moved into a small apartment nearby, close enough to be actively involved in both children's lives but giving all of us the space needed to heal from the deceptions. Her journey to redemption has been challenging but genuine. Weekly therapy sessions, parenting classes, and unflinching honesty have slowly rebuilt her relationship with Aiden, who was understandably the most hurt by her actions. I never thought I'd have the courage to face what I'd done, Karen admitted during one of our co-parenting discussions. But seeing Travis abandon Jamie when she needed him most made me realize I had to break the cycle of deception and avoidance. Jamie's liver biopsy confirmed what Dr. Sanderson suspected. Damage consistent with medication toxicity, specifically the type associated with Neuralex. The pharmaceutical company, faced with mounting evidence of deliberate data suppression, established a victims' compensation fund that will cover Jamie's medical expenses for life. It's small consolation for the health challenges she faces, but it removes the financial burden from her future care. Fortunately, Jamie's condition stabilized with proper treatment. The possibility of a transplant remains on the horizon, but for now, medication and careful monitoring have halted the progression of the damage. Her previously yellowish complexion has returned to a healthy glow, and her energy has improved dramatically. "Watch me, Garrett!" Jamie calls as she performs an elaborate twirl through the water. She hasn't yet settled on calling me Dad, an understandable hesitation given the circumstances, but the respectful warmth in how she says my name feels like progress enough. The relationship between Aiden and Jamie has been the most beautiful development in this complicated situation. From the moment he discovered her existence, Aiden appointed himself Jamie's protector and guide to the world. He reads her dinosaur books, teaches her about science, and fiercely defends her from playground curiosity about their unusual family structure. "She's my sister," he says simply when asked to explain. "The rest doesn't matter." Travis faced consequences beyond the personal realm. The investigation into Neurolex expanded to include examination of the clinical trials, where ethics violations were discovered, including Travis's failure to disclose his relationship to one of the pediatric subjects. His pharmaceutical career effectively ended with multiple companies distancing themselves from the scandal. He now works in an entirely different industry and maintains minimal contact with Jamie. A monthly phone call and occasional supervised visits that leave her confused and often upset. "He's not a bad person," Karen reflected once. "Just someone who values image over substance, who never learned to put others' needs before his own. I'm sorry I couldn't see that earlier. My own growth has perhaps been the most unexpected. The betrayal and shock could have hardened me, turned me bitter toward Karen or dismissive of Jamie. Instead, it forced me to examine my own role in our family's breakdown. While nothing justifies Karen's deception, my emotional absence and prioritization of work over family created vulnerabilities in our marriage that Travis exploited. I've restructured my hospital schedule, delegating more and establishing clearer boundaries between professional demands and family needs. My relationship with Aiden has deepened through our shared experience of discovery and adaptation. We talk more openly now, with a mutual respect that goes beyond the typical father-son dynamic. A few weeks ago, I went on my first date since the divorce, coffee with Dr. Elena Rivera, a new neurologist at the hospital. We're taking things slowly, both aware of the complicated family situation I'm navigating. But it feels hopeful, a reminder that life continues to evolve even after what feels like devastating endings. Karen and I have established a fragile but functional co-parenting relationship centered on the children's needs. We communicate clearly, attend important events together, and present a united front on matters of discipline and values. The romantic love between us is gone, replaced by something more practical but no less important: mutual respect and shared purpose in raising Aiden and Jamie. "I never imagined we'd end up here," Karen commented recently as we watched the children playing. "But despite everything, I think they're going to be okay." "Because they have truth now," I replied. "Secrets were poisoning all of us. Aiden's courage in bringing everything to light ultimately saved this family, even if it's not the family we once pictured. The wisdom of my 12-year-old son, now 13 and increasingly insightful, changed all our lives. His detective work, born from confusion and fear, forced adults to face truths we had been avoiding. His immediate acceptance of Jamie showed us all what true family values look like: unconditional love, honesty, and putting others' needs before our own comfort. Jamie runs up to me now, soaking wet and grinning. "Garrett, can we have popsicles? Aiden said to ask you." "After you dry off." I agree, handing her a towel. "And only if you help set the table for dinner. Your mom will be here soon." Our Sunday family dinners have become a healing ritual, Karen joining us at the house she once shared with me, all four of us navigating this new normal one meal at a time. It's awkward sometimes, painful occasionally, but increasingly comfortable as we embrace the reality of our situation rather than hiding from it. The doorbell rings, and Jamie races to answer it, knowing it's Karen. I hear their greetings, the genuine joy in Jamie's voice as she tells her mother about the sprinkler and popsicles. Aiden joins them more casually but accepts Karen's hug with increasing ease. As I watch them from the kitchen doorway, I reflect on how the truth, however painful, ultimately freed us all. Karen from her web of deception, me from my workaholic detachment, Travis from a relationship built on manipulation, and most importantly, the children from the confusing shadows of adult secrets. Life rarely gives us the neat endings we hope for. Instead, it offers opportunities to rebuild from wreckage, to create something authentic from the ashes of what was lost. Our family story isn't one I would have chosen, but it's ours now. Complicated, imperfect, and ultimately healing. Have you ever discovered a secret that changed everything you thought you knew about your family? How did you handle the truth when it finally came to light? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support others going through similar family challenges. Remember that healing begins with honesty, even when the truth is painful. Thank you for listening to my story, and may your own family journey, whatever its shape, be guided by love and truth.